Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, as the wait continues for the outcome of a meeting on Niger's coup by the African Union, the US says that their new ambassador will still head out to Niamey as planned. But that does not mean acceptance of the junta's legitimacy. Also, at least 160 Sudanese medical students have a shot at finishing their studies, despite the conflict racking their homeland. The group's headed to Rwanda, where they've been placed at a university in Kigali, where our correspondents caught up with them. And we head courtside to a basketball tournament in Benin. The Big Blast hopes to not just emphasize the fun side of the sport, but also its positive social impact. But first, despite the crisis caused by the coup in Niger, the US says that it will be sending a new ambassador to the country as planned. Washington's clarified that her arrival this week does not mean acceptance of the military takeover and that diplomatic efforts to reverse the coup will continue. Meanwhile, there's been a recruitment drive in Niamey itself for volunteers who back the army in the face of a threat by regional bloc ECOWAS to potentially use force to reinstate deposed and detained leader Mohamed Bazoum. ECOWAS military chiefs will meet on Thursday to discuss options on that front. Meanwhile, the outcome of a meeting of the African Union's Peace and Security Council, considering the Niger coup, is still uncertain. Earlier, I asked Dr. Andrew Yorchi about what's likely to be some of the more problematic considerations faced by the African Union.
I think where we're at the moment is the African Union is probably waiting to hear what ECOWAS' decision is going to be over the next 2 days. The military chiefs are meeting tomorrow and the day after, and they will come up with a more or less a communique about the situation and where the progress is on that end. And I think that's where the African Union is waiting for before it maybe speaks about what's going to be, its decision is going to be, and what the next steps are going to be. It's likely that because of this issue, or shall I say, because of the way the AU is structured in terms of subsidiarity, it will either follow ECOWAS or maybe talk more broadly about the coup and basically saying, in essence, it doesn't support it and it should be a return to constitutional order. So that's likely what we could see, but it all depends on, I say, the outcome of Thursday and Friday's ECOWAS meeting as well, and what the communique comes out of that as well.
Now, the chair of ECOWAS, Nigerian President Bola Tinubu, is pro-military intervention. His Nigerian parliament, though, less so. Concerns about the use of force have also been raised from other quarters as well. Do you think that it is still genuinely a likely option?
I think it's only a likely option if Nigeria leads and the capacity to be able to lead on this. Where we have seen, and people have cited other examples like the Gambia previously, that's where we saw a lead nation, whether it be Senegal or others, who led the way in the deployment. And so if Nigeria, should I say, the president doesn't get the backing of parliament, then it becomes very impossible to see a way in which Nigeria would lead that deployment in the use of force. And it's particularly important because Nigeria really is the leader in this when it comes to ECOWAS, but also particularly because it has the largest army amongst the West African nations as well. So if Nigeria isn't leading the way, then it's very unlikely that you would see any sort of push from ECOWAS states deploying under the ASF as well, the African Standby Force.
If a diplomatic resolution does actually result in, let's say, another transitional government in Niger, like we've seen in other coup-hit countries in the region, like Mali and Burkina Faso, what do you reckon is the likelihood of that successfully steering Niger back to democratic stability anytime soon?
About the transitional agreements, as you've said, is that is probably more likely going to be the outcome. What is interesting about transitional calls from transitional governments, from across the Sahel countries, Mali, Guinea, is that what we do see is that there's been a challenge of the elites or the individuals in terms of civil servants trying to navigate through the existing systems and trying to move the state forward. And Sudan is that classic example of where you have a transitional government that has failed, trying to deal with many of the issues, but again, navigating through the past and trying to navigate through it forward. And a lot of this stems from the challenges when it comes to support, navigating the old system, but also having the visionary and the very necessary mechanisms to support it. And oftentimes the AU and others are under capacity to be able to support these states. And so what you often see then is a relapse back to these past situations where the military in essence dominates. And so if that is the case of Niger, and I suspect we will head in towards a transitional or some form of transitional government, and we're seeing the makings of that, then that is likely, I think, the pattern going forward. But again, the key is going to be how do you resolve the existing challenges that exist within the state, but also move the state forward. And that, for me, if there's been a struggle with Sudan, Mali, it's even going to be worse in Niger's case as well.
Dr. Andrew Yorchi there for me. Now, since the coup, France and the US have suspended military operations with Niger, and they're concerned that jihadists have taken advantage of the security vacuum. On Wednesday, the junta said that 17 of its soldiers had been killed in an ambush by insurgents a day earlier. The attack happened in the Tiliberi border area with Burkina Faso as a military detachment was travelling between Boni and Torodi villages. The death toll from clashes between rival militia in Tripoli in Libya this week has risen to 45. Troops fanned out across the city on Wednesday as a truce took hold in the wake of some of the worst fighting the city's seen this year. The battling first broke out on Monday after the senior commander of one brigade was detained by a rival group. The country remains overall fragile and unstable. Since 2017, it's been caught between rival administrations in the east and west, supported by competing armed groups. Sudan's marked 4 months since the devastating war between rival generals broke out. Since then, both the military and the rapid support forces that they are fighting have been accused of human rights abuses. The capital, Khartoum, remains a battlefield, and fighting in the western region of Darfur has led to a resurgence of ethnic violence. At least 4,000 people have been killed, 4 million displaced, the health system has been decimated, and even the country's future doctors have been impacted as infrastructure crumbles around them. Some, though, have been able to head from Khartoum to Rwanda to finish their studies. That's where our correspondents met up with them.
These 160 Sudanese students attend their first lecture, given by a Minister of State.
I'd like to start by welcoming you to Rwanda.
The University of Rwanda welcomes these medical students with special care. Most of them fled their campus in Sudan as conflict between two generals escalated in the country. Hamir recalls his challenging escape.
The next day I had an exam, so I started waking up and I woke up to a war basically. So same day we had to leave Khartoum. I went and stayed with my family outside of Khartoum for a while. Then we went to Egypt, where me and my family, we stayed there for a little bit.
A Sudanese doctor who has been practicing in Rwanda for 3 years is hoping to find sanctuary for 7,000 displaced students from her old university.
There are students that need to be relocated. We are trying, to relocate more and more. So actually we started with this batch, and I'm very hopeful that, we can bring more.
After attending class, Amir starts his hospital rotations. For the next 8 months, he'll move through departments. He dreams of becoming a surgeon and practicing back home.
What's the point if I'm just going to become a surgeon and leave my country behind? Of course, I plan on coming back, helping my country. I think once we're back, I think we're going to rebuild our country and hopefully make our parents proud and our country proud.
The public university has made sacrifices to be able to accommodate the Sudanese students.
We are having a large number of students compared to the existing health facility. We wanted to open our door, to show sympathy, empathy, and supportiveness to the rest of the world.
Rwanda wants to present itself as a safe haven for refugees. The issue has been at the heart of controversy over the 2022 agreement with the UK to deport migrants to Kigali, a policy that's currently on hold.
And finally, we head courtside to a basketball tournament in Benin that's also brought players from Ivory Coast and Togo together. The Big Blast took over Cotonou with the help of an organisation that aims to promote not just the fun side of the game, but also its positive social impact. Take a look.
Basketball has a modest but growing following in Africa, And in a push to court more fans, 6 of the continent's biggest stars of the sport turned up to mentor some of the up-and-comers at the Big Blast competition in Cotonou. Isabelle Yakubu is a former French national team player who also calls Benin home.
I feel compelled to say that this land has shaped me, even though I completed my training abroad. Coming home to give back and inspire others is important, given the lack of representation in Africa. It's an honour for me to contribute, and even just knowing that I might have ignited a sense of purpose.
The tournament's been organised in part by the Miledou Association. The organization's name means we are together. Celebration of community is one of basketball's most important values. The platform also encourages girls, who are often underrepresented in the sport.
It makes me feel good, because it's given me the chance to travel outside of my country for the first time. I've made new friends, we shared things together, and I'm proud to be here.
The country now has 14 professional clubs, including 4 female teams. Sponsorship for the upkeep of courts play a big part in advancing the accessibility of the game.
In our social actions, we help to renovate basketball courts in colleges and high schools. We want the young players to be motivated when they see the court.
The enthusiasm for basketball hasn't left anyone on the sidelines, with the Big Blast event also focusing on better inclusion of players and fans with disabilities.
Wow, that looks so much fun. That is the where we'll have to leave it for Eye on Africa. Thanks for joining us. Do so again. Take care.